So it's been and gone. We've had the second part of the third season of Bridgerton, and my goodness, it certainly exists. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was mega hyped coming into this second part. I think it's clear from my videos I've done so far. Whilst I did have some criticism, I'm still an unapologetic Bridgerton stan, so I think my first video, it was actually rather complimentary, conciliatory. Not to toot my own horn, but a bit of a balanced take that I tried to make as fair as possible. And so I'm saying all this just to make it clear. I wasn't coming into this second part with any built-in anger or angst or bias. There's no salty agendas here, and it kind of pains me to say it, but I didn't particularly like this second part. And I think it sort of wrecked what I felt was a decent enough build at the start of the season. Oh, it's just depressing. You know that feeling? I was hyped for the last couple of days because for me, hype takes a while to set in and then it just builds each day before the release. Takes a little bit of time to kick into high gear, but when it does, my goodness, I'm hyped. And it peaked right as the episode dropped on Netflix. And whilst I say I didn't like it, I really liked it at first. As I'm going through the episodes, 5, 6, I'm still hyped, and then it starts to set in. Man, this isn't going how I expected. They're dragging this part out. What are they thinking with this choice? Oh well, it'll all come together in the finale, right? Wait, what do you mean there's no more episodes? And then you get left with this massive empty feeling, like the credits are rolling, and I feel like Ned Flanders.
I'm down, diddly 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 diddly. They did their best, shoddily diddly diddly diddly. Gotta be nice, hostility diddly diddly diddly. Ah, hell, diddly ding dong crap! Can't you morons do anything right?
You know what I mean? My god, bro, sometimes it felt like the story had been written by an AI. Or just by an enthusiastic fanfic writer that bit off way more than they could chew and insisted on forcing their original characters into every scenario. Mondrich, I'm looking at you, son. But I'll come back to that. But yeah, the gist of this is that I very much stayed there at the end of things feeling like my time had been wasted somewhat. And I'd just gone to see Inside Out 2, which I very much enjoyed. And so this, it just...
No! You threw off my groove!
But yeah, I suppose nothing else for it but to buckle in and start nailing down what I liked and what I didn't like. Okay, so I guess we'll just go storyline by storyline, yeah? Because I think that's where we hit the troubles. It's the storyline, because I think visually, in terms of the music, the costumes, I think the show's still running on a high, and I don't see that changing for me. Sometimes I do squint at the costumes and think, is that 100% accurate? And I'm sure there are people in the comments that could write out a full thesis statement about whether or not the costumes are proper period accurate attire, but I'm not one of those people. I really appreciate those people's existence, but I personally can't do it. And so for me, I think those elements carried the show in a lot of ways, because I was like, ooh, look at the pretty dresses, look at the flowers, ooh. Because the storylines, well, ooh, some of them were really, really, really good. And some of them were the shits. Seriously, does anybody give one single, solitary shit about the Mondrich plot? Sure, it was interesting at first to see what could happen to the Featherington title should the lawyer guy discover the plot that Lady Featherington had hatched. But what they did in part 1 was more than enough. Even then it was like, hey, you guys are having a lot of scenes. Probably could have used that time for other members of the family, not just Pollen, but Anthony and Kate and Benedict, Eloise, important characters. I'm sorry, but I do not have it in me to sympathize with this dude. He wins the lottery of life. Already, he's an attractive, handsome, strong dude, a talented boxer with great ambition. He marries a very beautiful woman. And what do you know? This woman is somehow related to a noble lady who in turn leaves everything to their son. And because he's only a child and thus not able to really come into his wealth and prestige yet, this allows mum and dad to live in luxury for the rest of their life. And they just began as simple common folk. And so the jump up in status is like waking up one day, getting an email that says, Bill Gates has just died, and he left it all to you. They're absurdly rich now. And so I'm supposed to give a single care in the world that this guy wants to keep going with his club? Bro, shut up, man. Shut up and take the money. For one, if you're absolutely going to have a cry about it, why not just host a lot of dinner parties at your house? On top of that, I don't even understand this plot from a writing perspective, because it's not really a business, is it? It's a club. Yeah, they accept money, but that's more for the maintenance of the club. I'm pretty sure that lots of lords and gentlemen had stakes in these sorts of clubs, gentlemen's clubs, where they go to drink and play parlor games and, meet courtesans. They're meant to be very exclusive type of things, so I don't even understand the problem with him owning it. Couldn't he just market himself as the head of the club instead of the owner of the club, if they think that's a bit dirty word. Bring in the Bridgerton brothers as your partners. Make a little club council. I mean, one of the OG gentlemen's clubs in real life, Brooks, on Wikipedia, it says it was founded by 27 prominent lords of the Whig political party. Even gives some of the names. And so from that perspective, it does not feel like it makes any sense for somebody having a stake or owning a club to draw ire from gentlemen at all. Because it's not really trade/work/business for them. Because it feels like the no trade work/business is one of those rules that had certain special limits. And I feel like a stake in a club is one of those things that would actually be considered gentlemanly. I mean, yeah, pouring the drinks himself, that would be very cringe. But I think owning it's fine. I do not think this storyline holds up under scrutiny based on actual historical evidence. And whilst the two are wholesome characters, they're also very, 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 very dull, with nothing drawing me in. They're just a waste of time. And then it just feels like the storyline gets abruptly dropped and fades away, and you're left feeling like, ugh, so why bother adding it in? And then they just appear in all these other scenes.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Next up, we can tackle Benedict. Oh, Benny, what have they done to you? By the way, just getting it out there, I'm no bigot. I am on board with bisexual Benedict. But the way they got to it, my God, it felt like the writers just wanted to see this dude naked as much as they could, with limited care put into his actual storyline. I mean, let's just take a look at it in its entirety, shall we? He starts off the season as a bit of a bystander character until he meets Lady What's-Her-Face, Lady Cougar. And that's fine and dandy. They meet, she's intense, he finds her very intoxicating. They meet up at her house, they have lots of sex. Lots and lots of sex. It's seemingly a friends with benefits type of relationship, and she openly tells him, I'm not looking for a serious attachment. And so I felt like all signs pointed to the fact that he was going to develop feelings for her and get rejected and heartbroken. And hell, from the trailer, I sort of gathered that perhaps she does end up remarrying or finding somebody she wants to be with romantically, and it's not him, and this leaves him feeling used and rejected. And thus it can springboard him into a romantic storyline next season. But that's not what they did. Instead, Benedict realizes that he's interested in both men and women. Nothing wrong with that. You can still do it. You can still do that storyline where he feels rejected and used. But then the storyline is simply, Benedict goes to an awkward dinner, he has intense stares with Lady Cougar and Lord Suave Guy, he goes home, comes back, has a chat with Lady Cougar, realizes he's very horny, and has lots of sex with them both. And that was it. That was the storyline. There was no depth to it. And we just kept cutting back to their sex scenes over and over and over whilst other storylines were progressing. And some of them were progressing what felt like days at a time. And then Benedict's just still banging relentlessly. And that's all fine and dandy. But that's all there was.
For 5 minutes. Could you not be yourself? For 5 minutes!
And I was still on board with it at this point. There was lots of sex and not much substance, but I thought, okay, so her and the other guy are eventually going to pair off. And Benedict, he's going to feel all alone in the world, rejected by these two people that he's come to love. And that'll tie into his final scene of the season, where he's looking lonely as all hell. I mean, look at that. He's sad. Instead, he dumps Lady Cougar when she wants to become exclusive because he wants to continue to explore. And that's fine, right? But instead, they still tie into this lost and lonely thing that he's doing at the end, being all left behind by everybody. I don't know. I just feel like this sort of story works better if he's the one who is dumped by his lovers, used, and then discarded. And then this can springboard into next season where he can find his own happy ending. And hell, you can even gender bend Sophie if you want. I really don't mind. Sophie to, Sophus? That's about as lazy as Michael to Michaela. Sophus. Can't believe that's a real name. No offense if you're named Sophus. I'm not going to pretend to know much about Sophie's storyline. I'm not a book reader. But I think she is a bastard. I'm not sure, but in that case, you could easily play off being insecure and mistreated about being a bastard into a male storyline too, making it a same-sex coupling. And I realise that probably part of the original story is that despite being of a lesser social standing and thus perhaps not marriage material, the only relationship she'll accept is being married because she doesn't want to be a mistress who bears more bastards. But you can still examine social standing outside of that. And from what I understand, the books are sort of treated as guidelines more than actual rules at this point.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
So there's a lot of original content going on, so you could easily make this work. And I honestly think that's how it's going to go, because, I don't know, otherwise, to me, this is a very strange tangent to have this storyline lead absolutely nowhere. It already felt rather directionless, just having orgies for the sake of having orgies. Does he have feelings for the guy? Romantic ones? That's never resolved, it's just dropped. We don't see him again. Yeah, it'd be weird if it doesn't continue on, right? Wouldn't it? Am I wrong here? I just think they've set up all the seeds for that type of storyline. Otherwise, I feel like it's lazy and directionless. And I mean, it already felt lazy and directionless because I think that Benedict should have had more of a desire for a deeper emotional connection at the end of this season. He should have been the one rejected. Maybe you disagree with me, but that's just my thoughts. It felt lazily done, like they want to do it all. He still feels lost and alone, but he's the one doing the rejecting, and he's the one being horny, and he's like, no, I want to be Polly, fuck off. And that's really it. His storyline felt like it was all steam, no substance, and it leaves him with so much more to catch up to where he needs to be a compelling romantic interest. Like, what the hell is this guy's story anymore? Every season, it's something new. It's like Mr. Toad from The Wind in the Willows. He's always going with a new topic and not sticking with it. And that's the writers for Benedict's storyline. There's too many ideas, and they're not executing them enough at all. And ultimately, you come away from it feeling like they could have built him having this failed romantic arc that felt more cutting and sad. Give you those bittersweet vibes at the end of the season. You know, like how season 2 had the disintegration of Eloise and Penelope's friendship, but also the humongously happy ending for Kate and Anthony. And in my eyes, they just didn't stick the landing here. That's the story of the season, I'm afraid. It's a running theme. Next up, Francesca. I actually really liked her arc throughout pretty much the whole season. Her and John, I found them cute and compelling. I liked her standing up to her mum about how there's many types of love and that not everybody feels the way that Violet feels. It was cute and sweet and endearing, it was very romantic, but then at the end I felt like they straight up torpedoed it dead at the end because she meets Michaela and then does the exact same thing her mum described for a true love match. She forgets her own name. She stumbles and stutters over her words. And to me, it sort of invalidates the whole season she's had with John so far. And just felt, ugh. I don't know, it makes me feel sad for this dude. Part of me hopes they just reveal that they're both gay, he doesn't die, and he gets a boyfriend and that all four of them live happily ever after, because the alternative to me is too depressing. That he loves her, she loves him, but not with the spark. Whilst meanwhile she's thirsting over his cousin, then he dies, and she lives happily ever after as a true love match, living off his estate forevermore. Yikes! Once again, I have no dog in the race of gender bend. All aboard Michaela's train. It's a weird thing to say. But for me, it feels like one of the riskier ones, right? Because it's already hit that stumbling block. You have a couple, John and Francesca, they're together and he is going to die. That seems confirmed. It's likely going to happen sooner rather than later, and from what I gather, a lot of the book is about coming to terms with new love. But also, Francesca's desperate desire to get married again so she can have a child.
Please, I have a child!
And that seems to be a big wish for her. It deals with grief and mourning and new love, guilt, and the struggles of attempting to become a mother. Whilst from Michael's point of view in the book, I think it's about imposter syndrome. Feeling like he's stealing his cousin's entire life. He's pretty much his brother, really. His whole life and world. He lusts after his widow. He's the new lord of the manor. He gets the money, the estate, the title, the prestige, even the clothing, if I'm not mistaken. And it's very painful for him to come to terms with this. And yes, I think elements can quite easily translate here, but I don't know if it'll be quite the same. On top of that, I feel like it's clear that a massive part of Michael's character is that he's a roguish, rakish sort of man. And that is informed by the fact that he is, in fact, a man. They have waxed poetic for a long time this season about how women lack agency in this era. So how can you have a character like Michaela who, if true to the book, is sleeping around and developing a massive reputation for such exploits? But then you also still have her be a respected part of society. I don't think that character translates all that well in the same way, because if there is a character like that, does it not in turn invalidate a lot of the other gender-based storylines of the opportunities and risks of being a woman in high society, or just a woman in general in this era? And so it does make me think that the story has to completely shift, and with it the characters must shift too. And that's fine, right? I'm not against that. I've said that before with Benedict. But to do so, I think you need highly competent writing. It's not like Benedict's where, the bastardy thing can be applied to a man and a woman. Hell, Jon Snow's a bastard. Translate some of that. That's a famous storyline. But here, I think you need even more highly competent writing because it needs to be so specific and you need to navigate a lot of different tricky areas. And overhaul Michaela's character, certainly, and make her far different than what you'd expect. And from what I saw of this season, specifically with the main romance of Pollen, I'm not sure they have it in them. I'd be very happy to be wrong. I'm optimistic about the show in a lot of ways. I'd love for it to go well, and I think Francesca is one of my favourite characters, so I do want to see more of her storyline. I'm on board with that. But like I said, Pollen felt like one of the big anchoring points, not just for this season, but for the entire show, and it didn't go well, and they didn't stick the landing. So I'm very nervous. I think it can work. Just spitballing. Maybe Francesca has a baby with John dies, Michaela has to deal with the imposter syndrome of essentially becoming the second parent to this child. I don't know, just spitballing here. I'm also rather worried for the poor actress. I hope people are nice, for God's sake. So yeah, in essence, I think it was a clumsy opening to their love story. It should have been a far, far, far slower burn in my opinion, and it's clear that the story is going to need to be far more original, and Michaela will need to be overhauled somewhat. Can the writers pull it off? We'll see. I hope so, though. Who's next? Anthony. Sure, why not? I hated it. That's it, I hated it. They come back. Feels like it's been so long that they've been gone that my brain even struggles to reconcile them as part of the Bridgerton family anymore. The stories pass them by and they don't fit in the same. It was weird. Like, there were some really good parts, pregnancy and their banter, where the scenes are just those two. But when they were with everybody else, it felt weird, like when Daphne randomly turned up last season. It would be nice and fan servicey, but it also felt odd, because the world had passed them by. For me, it even sometimes gets odd when the actual siblings interact sometimes, because so often they're off on their own tangents and storylines. God damn, they need to cut the Mondrich family and turn that into Bridgerton fluff scenes to develop the family bond. This supposedly legendary family bond. And what's worse, off they go to India so the actors can move on to bigger and better things. I mean, good for them, good for the actors. I'm not bitter towards them, but for God's sake. I feel like Anthony was such a huge part of the show, and it feels wrong when he's not here. And that's why I was so sad when he was there, because it felt like he didn't fit anymore. I don't know how to explain it really, but it feels bad, man. It feels bad. Next up, Cressida. What even was this storyline? Like, we seem to be building to some sort of Cressida redemption in the first part. Not a full one. She's still carrying a lot of baggage that you can work out in subsequent seasons, but there's room to grow and improve. Make peace with Penelope. Her friendship with Eloise really altered how I viewed her as a character and gave her much needed depth, which was why I was so disappointed that they walked that shit back.
So basically, what I was thinking of was, oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
And let's be real, did it not seem like the very, very fucking obvious endgame point? You know, excuse my French, but this has pissed me off. That she was going to get swept off by Lord Beardhead, who likes birds and will conveniently piss off the Greenland for 3 years, leaving her rich, powerful, and most importantly, free of her massive asshole dad. And even better, they might kill him off screen, so she's free and rich, a rich widow. Happy days. But that's not the path that the story walks down. It's not the arc they choose. Instead, it's just Cressida getting punished by being saddled with this old piece of shit as a husband, a miserable bastard who would steal her joy, the Lord Danbury experience. Like, what? How is this fair and justified? And then it gets worse and worse for her. And I will not tell you that all her actions were good ones, and the blackmail was indeed pretty bad. But I can't help but feel that she gets inordinately punished for claiming to be Lady Whistledown in the first place in order to try to escape from that awful, awful man. Like the Ton shunning her, I get it. The Queen being the Queen, I get it. You know, we all love the Queen, but she's not a very nice person. But then Eloise pretty much cutting her losses with her and telling Penn that she'd soured on the friendship anyway, that's pretty fucked. I mean, I would probably do the exact same things if I was being forced to marry that guy by my dad. And hell, remember when Cressida was trying to talk to her about a plan of escape? And Eloise is all like, oh, whatever, bro. I have my own shit going on. Like, I love her character, but it almost felt out of character. How she dropped her faster than a sack of shit. And she just shrugged when confronted with Cressida's problem in the first place.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
And at the same time, Cressida had listened to her wax poetic about all her issues all season. Where's the give and take here? She befriended you when you were a social disgrace. Come on. I just felt like they'd wasted my time on this ham-fisted punishment arc, because that's what it feels like. Like the writers getting back on all the mean girls they've ever met. It's like in Harry Potter, when some of those girls would get absolutely brutalized. Lavender Brown, looking like a fool. That girl that dobs on the DA in the 5th book, who gets the pimples on her face that are like permanent forever. Just felt like J.K. Rowling lashing out at her bullies. The classic mean girl gets what she deserves. Ugh. And what does she get to do? You have to choose, Cressida. Either you get marital rape and utter social disgrace and ruin, living with a woman in Wales who's cut from the same cloth as your abusive dad. Like, bruh, Who liked this storyline? Who liked this ending? And then at the end you have Penn write a sorry, whoopsie edition of Lady Whistledown. And by the way, Lady Whistledown was as much of a bully as Cressida ever was. I'm not saying Penn deserves to be punished. No one deserves to be punished like this.
My friends need to be punished.
But I'm saying Cressida deserves grace. And I just felt uncomfortable the whole time that not one single character seemed to give a shit. Not even her mum, really. She was in it for herself, trying to protect herself. And no one tried to understand why she'd stooped this low. Bring back Veggie Man! Lord Veggie Man, where are you? He just dropped off the face of the earth. He previously seemed keen enough. Plus, she's perfect for him. She's beautiful and rich. It's not like personality matters much for this guy, because he's almost always going to be gone. You just come away from it thinking, well, thanks for wasting my time with this story. And it just made it harder for me to legitimately enjoy Penelope and Eloise reconnecting as friends, which I wanted to enjoy because it was building all season and I was so ready for it, but it was overshadowed by these dark storm clouds of Cressida being screwed over by the story. It just wasn't handled very well. And I felt like instead of them coming to that emotional understanding, it was far more based around, Cressida's such a bitch, right? Although that being said, once it was back on, my God, it was goddamn cute. Eloise crying at the wedding, hugging Penn when Colin was being annoying. I'm here for that shit. You love to see it. Honestly, I gotta say, one thing the show did so damn well was the importance placed on platonic love. Friendship, parental bonds, that sort of thing. Lady Danbury and Violet, oh my heart! So cute and sweet, their lovely little friendship. Violet being completely unable to progress in her own romance. If it means that Agatha would be left feeling bereft and betrayed, oh, it's so beautiful! Violet trying to bond with Francesca, trying to understand how she's different from her other children, and the void of feeling the loss of multiple kids growing up and leaving the nest. Anthony off to India. He'll be back, but he's off right now. Eloise and Francesca off to Scotland. Gregory to Eton. Colin in his own home with his own family. Very poignant stuff. Then there's the sweet, beautiful stuff like the bond between Brimsley and the Queen, showed in more depth. The true epitome of platonic soulmates right there. And there's Agatha and her brother reconnecting and discussing their past trauma of their father and how that divided them into adulthood and they want to reconcile that. Those cute moments with the Bridgerton brothers where they accept John into the family at the bar, or Portia finally marrying off all her children and realizing that she'd missed out on so much with them, on being the mother that she could have been. And thus she starts to do her best to reconnect and bond with them, particularly with Penelope. But then you see it at the end with the two other kids too, when they think she's funded their ball. And then even the sisters becoming somewhat closer than they were previously. At the end, Philippa telling her daughter that she's happy she's a daughter and she wants her to be a writer like her aunt. Oh, it's so adorable. What's up with all this platonic love? It's so great. But then from platonic back to romantic, I goddamn loved Violet and Lord Anderson. Lord Anderson, that's his right name? Sanderson, something, I don't, the handsome bald guy. Hell yeah, hook it into my veins! I needed that. You needed that. Apparently it's going to be 2 years until the next goddamn season. If that is the case, they better have a goddamn spin-off in the works for next year or some shit. Violet and this guy embarking on their love story, whilst also reflecting on their past romances. Her with Edmund, him with that other lady. So we get that too. Double the steam. No, triple the steam. Seriously. This was just pure wholesome. A lovely palate cleanser, and I need more of it. I need more of it. This dude, his smile is so charming. Seriously, I was drawn in. Look at him, he seems so nice. And at last, we come to the main event. We've waited this long for the big storyline. Pollen, the conclusion. And I'll be real, it started so goddamn strong for me. I enjoyed part 1, I was all there for it. I enjoyed the early stages of part 2 as well. They're together, it's happy, they're in love. He stands up for her to her mum. Oh yeah. Then they have that steam. And there's always that sword of Damocles. It's hanging over proceedings. Eloise wants Penn to confess to being Lady Whistledown. And then eventually, it all goes to shit. And at first, it's compelling. The angst. Oh, delicious angst. Betrayal. But then it's more angst. Whoa, what do you know? It's more angst. Oh, and here is your winner, angst. Come on down. And it just doesn't end at all. To the point that I'm no longer understanding or caring about Colin's continual righteous indignation. For God's sake, man, let it go. I made a video essay about how your arc is overcoming toxic masculinity. You've made me look like an idiot. Because despite such promise, you revert to all your classic dipshit behaviours. Thinking you know best, punishing the woman beyond what's reasonable, hooking up with her in the streets, and then still punishing her, being a fucking sourpuss on your own wedding day. Come on, bro. I mean, what Lady Whistledown said about Eloise was way worse. But she moved past it faster than your ass, mate. She called me a rake, and she's a published author, but I'm not. Me. Colin, piss off, mate. You're a joke. You're being cringe.
My God, pull yourself together.
Cressida was right about this guy. He's feeling inadequate and lashing out because he's cringe. Remember when he put his foot down and he goes to speak with Cressida and he makes the blackmail even worse?
You're a fucking idiot.
The angst went on way too long, beyond the point where anybody would want it to. And then it finally comes back to happy times and the show ends. Ends! No steam. Where's my steam?
More steam!
There's not enough, bro. I swear to God, I watched Simon's gyrating ass for 10 years back in the day. What is going on? Meanwhile, Benedict, he's banging two side characters we'll never see again for like 2 days straight if you look at how they cut up the timeline. And yeah, it took her publicly shaming herself in front of the entire ton and the Queen for this dude to be like, oh yeah, now we're good. Does that mean we get to shame you, bro? Does that mean we get to walk of shame this guy's ass through Mayfair like Cersei in Game of Thrones for being a massive man whore? No. Double standards much, Colin? Is there double standards for you, Colin? Also, side note, I was just also sad that this storyline heralded the end of Lady Whistledown. For no other reason than, is that the end for Julie Andrews' voiceovers? I'm sad now.
Shut up.
But yeah, in summary, I don't think they stuck the landing with this one. I feel like the back half of part 2 should have been Colin fighting to protect Pen, trying to prevent her revealing herself to protect her, and her trying to reveal herself to protect the family. Both doing it out of intense love for one another. The discovery should have been dealt with in one episode. By the end of it, it should not have overshadowed the wedding. We should have had some wedding night theme. By the end of the second episode, it should have been resolved. And then on to the next challenge. Instead, we dwell on it forever. Boring angst where the status quo never changes and you don't get the development you want. I did not need longing anymore. I had longing for 2 seasons and a half. What are you doing? And then the scenes you want to see where they're happy and, you know,
Have lots of sex and babies.
it's not going to feel the same if you give it next season. It just won't be the same. It'll be a side bit part at best because they're not the leads anymore. It's just depressing, man. I'm not going to say any cringeworthy lies like, oh, I'm done with this show. I'm never coming back. This was my final season. Because, you know, everyone that says that, you're lying. So yeah, that's the end. And I would like to say that these have just been my opinions and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of part 2 of season 3? Did you like it maybe? Do you hate it like me? Well, that's not even fair. I didn't hate it. I just hated parts of it. I did love some of it too. But yeah, I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.